Joining us now live, we have NewsNation political contributor Denise Gitsham and Nathan Dashel, political strategist and president and COO of the Dashel Group. Good morning to both of you. Denise, let me start with you. For the second time in this campaign, in 9 weeks, the focus has completely shifted to an attempt on the former president's life. How do you see this second attempt changing the political landscape from here?
I wish I could be a bit more optimistic, Becky, honestly, about how I think this is going to impact how we talk about each other in this political environment. I think it's such a shame that we've gotten to a point in our culture and in American culture where we think it's okay to say things that are incendiary all the time and really say things that are really about character assassination and painting someone as a grave danger when in fact what we're saying is that they're bad instead of they're wrong. That's a real shift in the way that we think about people we disagree with. And I think we're seeing the ramifications of it now. I don't think that they're going to get any better anytime soon, certainly not in the next 50 days in the race to the finish line. But if we don't have a serious come to Jesus about who we are as Americans and the kind of country that we want to be and how we think about people we disagree with, which is what, 1 in every 2 people, then we're going to continue to see this sort of violence erupt. And I don't think we have any solutions other than looking within.
Yeah, I know you've written a lot about this in your book, Politics for People Who Hate Politics. You'll have enough for a follow-up, a second book after this year. Nathan, after the first assassination attempt, we heard all of these bipartisan calls to lower the temperature. Let's dial back the rhetoric here. That obviously hasn't happened. I mean, why? Especially why not after July?
That's a good question. I think part of it is that, you know, an attack on a presidential candidate is an attack on our country and all of us. And I agree with everyone who says that the divisiveness and the rhetoric and the extreme attacks on each other have gotten out of control. But it's not the responsibility of just one party or just one person to bring about a healthier dialogue. It's really the responsibility of all of us. It's my responsibility. It's our responsibility. And I think until we all recognize that all of us are responsible for the quality of our dialogue and our debate, the situation won't improve.
Denise, what kind of impact did the first assassination attempt have on the polls? And can President Trump expect to see a sizable boost in numbers and fundraising, you think?
You know, I hate to say it, but I think the fact that he actually got hit in the last assassination attempt gave him a wellspring of goodwill from people. People were willing to take a second look and see if this was a man that was changed or if he was just, they had a lot of sympathy for him. And unfortunately, I think because this was, thankfully, an assassination attempt that was foiled before anything serious could happen and before anyone could die other than the presidential candidate, I just think that there's not going to be the same impact. You know, I do think that unlike when Biden stopped campaigning after the rally in Pennsylvania, they're just going to continue running, you know, in a sprint towards the finish line because we really are that close. And I don't think there's any time to waste in the candidate's mind. So I'm not really sure what impact that had or will have moving forward.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. But there's no doubt about it. I mean, the Trump camp has used both of these incidents as momentum. Nathan, the magnifying glass is so focused on Trump right now. Also, Vice President Harris, how safe are these candidates? But also, you know, pulling back, you know, the lens here. What about down-ballot races? Is there any evidence that these attempts on President Trump's life are driving support for the Republican Party as a whole?
Well, that is an excellent question. What we've learned in the last couple of decades is that voters don't split their tickets anymore. So in the 1980s, voters used to elect senators from different parties and they would vote for president about half the time. About half the Senate came from a different political party than their state voted for president. Right now, there are only 5 senators who come from a different party than their state voted for president. Wow. So straight ticket voting is a very real thing. And I think to the extent that President Trump is helped or gains sympathy from this, that will translate down ballot to some of those Senate candidates in the battleground states.
Well, we can expect to hear more about this. We know Trump's campaign event on Tuesday in Flint, Michigan is still happening despite everything that has gone on. He'll no doubt be talking about this this week. Thanks to both of you for hopping on with me. I always appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Great to see you.